It was never on the floor plans. No record in the archives, no mention in the city zoning files. Just a forgotten concrete rectangle buried behind a rusted boiler room in the basement of the defunct West Graceland Sanatorium, scheduled for demolition next month. I'm not a journalist. Not exactly. I write grant assessments for historical preservation projects, dry reports, timelines, documentation. I'm not supposed to investigate anything. But when I pushed open that warped utility door, half convinced it was just a janitor's closet, I stepped into something colder than the rest of the building. A room sealed in rot and time. The stench hit first. Fungal. Iron-rich. Like wet paper soaked in blood and left to congeal. The air inside was thick enough to chew. The only light came from the flicker of my phone screen, casting shadows that didn't sit right on the crumbling walls. Everything was damp. The plaster peeled like dead skin. At first glance, the room was empty. Then I saw the small cabinet, bolted to the floor like it might escape. Medical steel, padlocked twice, top flecked with dark rust that had turned the corners to saw teeth. Something about it whispered don't. But I'm not wired that way. It took a crowbar and 20 minutes to pop the locks. Inside were 5 things. 1. A leather-bound ledger, completely unmarked save for a single embossing on the inside cover. Property of Dr. R. Ravencroft 2. A yellowed photograph of a pale child in a Victorian nightgown, eyes scratched out with a fountain pen. 3. A crumpled telegram dated 1939. Discontinue Series D. Subject instability spreading. Facility breach possible. 4. A rusted key labeled Upper East Annex 5. And finally, a small jawbone. Human, by the shape. Child-sized. The name, Ravencroft, meant nothing to me at the time. Not yet. But it kept appearing. Once in the ledger's early pages, again in the telegram's recipient field, and then, chillingly, carved into the underside of the cabinet. R. Ravencroft // 1896 to 1947 / all burns down. I didn't sleep that night. I read through the ledger cover to cover. Most pages were dry clinical notes, disturbingly dispassionate observations about unnamed subjects. But every few entries, the tone cracked, shifted. Notes grew manic, paranoid. Entire lines redacted in thick ink, sometimes with passages torn out violently, leaving only ragged stubs. One entry in particular stuck with me. June 18, 1938. Subject 5A still repeats the phrase. The black door, mother went through. Drawings becoming geometric, none symmetrical, starting to suspect shared cognition or mimetic psychosis. There was no mention of what Series D was, but across the margins, the name kept returning. Ravencroft, sometimes with an initial M or E, other times accompanied by hastily drawn symbols. One looked like a serpent biting its tail. Another, a triangle made of human teeth. The Upper East Annex, as it turns out, had been sealed off for decades. The sanatorium blueprints showed a hallway there, now bricked up. According to city records, the annex was condemned in 1952 after a fire, though there was no fire insurance claim, no fire department report. Just a note scrawled at the bottom of a handwritten inventory list. All removed. Entry forbidden by Order 6B. Burn ledger. But it wasn't burned. It found me. This wasn't just a case of poor record keeping. Someone had gone to considerable lengths to bury this piece of history. And if the contents of that ledger are even half true, someone still wants it buried. The thing is, I should have walked away. My job was already done. But I keep hearing the name now. Ravencroft. Not just in the documents, but in city permits, school charters, endowments. A line of influence running silent and deep beneath the state. A family tree without roots. All with ties to forgotten children, sealed doors, and sudden fires. I don't know what the Ravencroft family did inside those walls. But they had money. Power. Enough to erase themselves from public memory. Still, something slipped through. I feel it under my skin now, like mold growing behind drywall. Quiet. invisible, dangerous. I've requested restricted access to the East Annex. I've called in a favor with a state archivist. I need to know what was behind that black door the child kept drawing. I need to know why they all went silent after 1947. And most of all, why someone scratched "all burns down" into steel and then buried it beneath 50 years of concrete. The East Annex wasn't supposed to exist. According to the official West Graceland Sanatorium floor plans, the eastern corridor ended at a brick wall, sealed during structural reinforcements in 1952. But a retired maintenance contractor, Frank Vellman, 83, oxygen tank hissing between wheezes, told me otherwise. Used to be the special wing, he said, eyes glossy. Real hush-hush. No patients came in through the front door over there. No one ever came out. After a few greased palms and a trespass I won't detail, I found it. The entry was hidden behind an old janitorial wall panel. The brick wasn't structural, just layered to deter curiosity. What lay beyond was a narrow corridor of rusted doors and flaking green paint. The silence there had weight, like the air hadn't moved since the Truman administration. Inside one room, I found a storage cabinet with faded folders, brittle to the touch. Typed on brittle onion skin paper was a header: Ravencroft Educational Therapeutic Institute, ready, where fractured minds find healing through order. The documents detailed a joint project between the State Department of Juvenile Rehabilitation, St. Joseph's Archdiocese, and a private research foundation known as the Ravencroft Trust. Ready had operated from 1926 to 1947 under full charter and spiritual advisement. Publicly, it was a place where at-risk and orphaned youth were given structure, education, and spiritual care. But none of the names on the intake rosters appeared in subsequent census or employment records. No graduation lists. No discharge papers. No deaths recorded. In one manila envelope labeled Program Administration, I found a photo. 32 children lined up in neat rows, expressionless, hair identically cropped, faces angled slightly away from the camera. A handwritten note on the back read, Series D, Post-Phase 2 Adaptation. Observe for mirror cognition. Among the administrative documents was a memo dated March 1935. Father Emmerich insists that the schedule remain unchanged. Even those exhibiting tremors or ocular bleed must attend recitations. He believes proximity accelerates soul sync. We must continue until threshold breach. Father Emmerich Ravencroft. I'd found the founder. Ordained in 1918, Emmerich was a Jesuit scholar turned child psychologist. He published one book, The Harmonious Mind, Discipline and Divinity in Development, which reads today like a blend of Pavlov, medieval asceticism, and something far darker. He wrote in one passage, to cure chaos, one must not merely erase the wound but erase the pattern that permitted it. Even innocence must be recalibrated. I cross-referenced Reddy's name with the state's legislative archive and found a 1949 inquiry transcript buried in microfilm. Case NO. 93 Alpha // Closure Review, Ravencroft Trust Properties.